So in learning, we've got habituation, which is repeated exposure to a conditioned stimulus, which will decrease the response. And dishabituation is recovery of a stimulus after habituation. So let's say, for example, I keep wearing a piece of sweater, and eventually I'll become habituated. If the material of the sweater changes, I will not have habituation. I'll have dishabituation, where I'll recover the response to a stimulus of wearing something. Um, Associative learning is pairing behavior and response. Classical conditioning is when you pair an otherwise neutral stimulus with a response. So the bell, which is the neutral stimulus, which normally wouldn't induce any response, is paired with meat and salivation. So when you ring the bell, you will have the conditioned stimulus will be the bell, and the conditioned response will be salivation. Spontaneous recovery is when you have extinction and then you get the response show up again. Generalization is the broadening effect of the conditioned stimulus. The example is little Albert and white being generalized. Discrimination is when an organism can distinguish between similar stimuli. So, for example, like when you ring a bell, if the frequency is 10, then you can distinguish between a 10 hertz and 20 hertz. You won't salivate in the 20 hertz. Operant conditioning is linking voluntary behavior with consequences. Reinforcement is increasing the likelihood, and positive is when you add an incentive, and negative is when you remove something unpleasant. Escape learning is behavior which reduces the present unpleasant feeling, and avoidance learning is behavior that reduces future unpleasant learning. Sorry, future unpleasant feelings. Punishment is reducing the occurrence of a behavior. Positive means you add an unpleasant consequence to reduce the behavior, and negative is removing stimulus to reduce behavior. Positive and negative just means if you add something to the subject or not. Reinforcement schedules. Fixed ratio is behavior that is recorded after a specific number of performances. Variable ratio is reinforcing behavior after varying number of performing behavior. Fixed interval is reinforcement of behavior after specified time has elapsed, and variable interval is reinforcement of behavior at varying time interval. The best, most effective is variable ratio because the organism will keep doing it to get a response. Cognition terms. Latent learning is learning that occurs with the incentive of a reward. So, for example, mice can run through a maze, but when there's a reward introduced, the mice learn the maze better. Problem solving is trial and error to solve problems. Instinctive drift is difficulty in overcoming instinctual behaviors. Observational learning is learning by watching. Mirror neurons are used in the front and parietal lobes in order to mimic certain behaviors. Memory. Encoding is putting new information into memory. Controlled processing is active memorization of information, and semantic encoding is putting context in the relevance of self. Most effective. For example, if I had diabetes, I would remember certain things about diabetes more because it's relevant to me. Ways to memorize. Mnemonics is using acronyms to memorize, so PMAT for prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase. Method of loci is associating each item on a list through a memorized building. So if you want eggs, you can put the eggs in the living room and then you get the milk in the table. Chunking is taking things from a large list and breaking it up. Long-term memory. Elaborative rehearsal is association of memory to long-term knowledge. Implicit memory is skills and conditioned responses, and explicit memory is memories that require conscious recall. These are usually declarative. So, human memory, we've got sensory, short-term, and working memory. Long-term is broken up into explicit and implicit. Implicit is procedural memory, such as learning how to ride a bike or how to bake a cake. Explicit memories is declarative memories, and in that, that's broken down into episodic and semantic. Semantic is just facts, so like my phone is black, the computer that I have is a Mac. Episodic is events and experiences, so essentially like what happened at a crime scene, what happened at a birthday party. Retrieval. So retrieval is being able to pull up memories that have been ingrained into the long-term memory. Recognition is identifying pieces of information that someone has already learned. This is why you learn the facts in the MCAT, and then you basically identify what is right and what is wrong in the test. Semantic network is concepts that link everything together based on similar meaning. Priming is recalled aided by presenting something with a first word or phrase. Forgetting. Alzheimer's is a degenerative brain disorder which is linked to the loss of ACH. When you look at a microscopic sample of a brain, you'll see neurofiber tanglings and beta amyloid plaques. These are changes in the protein folding which cause plaques. Sundowning is dysfunction of a person in the late afternoon and evening. This is usually found with Alzheimer's. Dementia is a loss of cognitive function and memory, and Korsakoff syndrome is memory loss with the loss of thymine. Retroamnesia is loss of older memories, and anteromnesia is not being able to make new memories, so forward. Agnosia is the inability to recognize faces, people, and sounds. Interference. So retrieval error, which is caused by existence of other information. The other information can be new information or old information. Proactive interference is old information which interferes with the new learning. Retroactive interference is new information that makes you forget the old stuff. So proactive is future stuff you can't learn, and retroactive is you forget the old stuff. Misinformation effect is creating false memories based on other information. The book in Kaplan talks about showing a picture of a stop sign, and then the passage says something about a yield sign. So then everyone thinks that when they ask to recall, they remember a sign and they don't remember if it was a stop sign or a yield sign, and they use the information in the passage, say it's a yield sign. Neurobiology. Neuroplasticity is new neural connections which form rapidly based on stimuli. And long-term potentiation is strengthening of neurotransmitters and receptor densities to basically ingrain long-term memory.